Hi, everybody. I'm going to get started with my own introduction, and then I'm going to have our panelists introduce themselves in just a moment. My name is Jay Esposito. I'm the Assistant Dean for Enrollment here at Drexel University's Thomas R. Kline School of Law in Philadelphia. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening. We're here today for a very specific topic. We're going to be talking about two programs that are very unique to Drexel Kline Law. That is our 2-year accelerated JD and our 3-year summer start JD programs. And we have some amazing student panelists here that we're going to ask questions of in just a moment. Before we begin, I just want to brush through some very quick items to announce. First and foremost, this coming week, we have our first big application deadline, which is November 15th. So if you are thinking about applying for this upcoming summer or this upcoming fall, if you apply by November 15th, you'll be among the first individuals reviewed for admission for this upcoming year. You'll also be among the first considered for a scholarship award. You'll be guaranteed a decision by January 15th. And if you took the November LSAT, your score can still come in later this month, so long as all of your other items are submitted by the November 15th deadline. So just something to keep in mind that's coming up this week. For tonight's session, this is going to be a laser focus on those two very specific programs, the accelerated 2-year JD and the 3-year summer start. So first, we're going to have our student panelists introduce themselves. We're going to have them share what programs they're here representing so you can get an idea of who's here to discuss which program. I'm going to then toss a bunch of questions for them. I have questions compiled, many that were sent in from you who registered to attend this evening, others from other prospective students for these programs. So we're going to toss those questions at them so that we can hear their responses. And we will leave plenty of time for all of you out there to be able to ask any questions that you have of any of our panelists about those programs and about their experience here at the law school. So without further ado, we'll jump right in. And I'm going to go right in the order that I have you all on my screen. We're going to start with Rita, we'll go to Cody, and then we'll go to Matt. If each of you could introduce yourself, just tell us what program you're representing this evening, if there's a specific law concentration or student organization that you are working closely with here at the law school, and then tell us what undergrad institution you attended and what geographic region that you came from before you started law school. And we'll start with Rita.
Hello, my name is Rita Ugorji. I'm in the 2-year AJD program, the accelerated JD. My interest is in IP law and health law. I am originally from Baltimore, Maryland, and I went to Temple University for undergrad.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Rita. Cody, we'll go to you next.
Hi, my name is Cody. I am part of the 3-year summer start program. I went to Temple as well for undergrad, and I'm originally from Philadelphia, so still at home. I am on the board for BOLSA, which is our Black Law Student Association, as well as I'm also the VP of Student Affairs for the SBA, which is basically law school student government. And I am a staff member of the Law Review.
Excellent. Thank you, Cody. And last but not least, we'll jump to you, Matt.
Hey everyone, I'm Matt. I am also a part of the 3-year summer start program. I am from Brooklyn, New York. I went to undergrad at Franklin and Marshall College in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. In terms of student involvement, I am also serving on the board of BOLSA alongside Cody. I am the sports chair of the Sports and Entertainment Law Society, as well as working closely with the admissions team as a law school ambassador.
Excellent. Thank you all. I really appreciate you being here this evening. And before we jump into our questions, I want to pass it off quickly to Jacqueline Marsh, my colleague on the admissions team, to introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, my name is Jacqueline Marsh. I'm the Assistant Director of the Admissions team, and I have had the pleasure of connecting with some of you through phone calls and emails, and I'm excited to work with you all during the application process.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jacqueline. So first, before we get too deep into these programs, I just want to get a sense from you, the students that are in them. What are these programs? So for example, we'll start with you, Rita. What is the 2-year JD. How does this work? How does it compare to a traditional JD? Can you tell us in your own words what the program's like?
Yes, sure, Jay. So normally your JD is completed in 6 semesters over 3 years. With the accelerated JD, it's 2 years, 6 semesters still, but yeah, 2 years. So you don't have summers off, so you're in classes, but pretty much the same as a traditional 3-year program.
That's right. And is it, would you say, same format aside from that 2-year versus 3-year, meaning it's on the semester system and same professors, same classes?
Yeah, so same professors, same classes, even the way the classes are organized, what you normally take your 1L year, you're still taking those 1L classes as a accelerated student. So pretty much the same thing, just faster.
That's great. And before we jump over to our other students to talk about the 3-year summer program, can we drill down, Rita, why did you pick this program? What was it that was appealing to you about a 2-year JD versus the 3-year?
I guess the thought of going in and then coming out so quickly was exciting. This is also a career change for me. I was working beforehand, and so I felt like, oh, if I'm going back to school, I guess let's do it as quickly as possible so I could start this new career and get that experience.
That's great. So it was really for you, the amount of time that you were going to be in the program was the thing that was the draw. That was what was most appealing.
Yes, I like the fact that it's a 2-year program and I'm not really losing too much of the law school experience by doing it.
Love it. Thank you so much, Rita. I'm going to jump to Cody next to talk about 3-year summer, and then we'll get to you, Matt. Cody, what is the 3-year summer start? How does that work? And how does that differ from a traditional 3-year program?
Yeah, so the 3-year summer start program, you start in May instead of starting in August. And then you take 2 classes over the summer, your legal writing and then one of your doctrinal classes. And after then in the fall, you have 1 less class than your fall starting peers in the fall and the spring. And then in your 2L year, everything is normal. So you're a little bit ahead in the beginning, but after the 1L year, everything else is pretty much the same. I chose this because I was coaching competitive cheerleading at my high school and I didn't want to stop. So I knew that if I was going to be able to keep up with what I was doing, having 1 less class would really be helpful. And I'm really glad that I was able to do that.
That's great. Thank you, Cody. I appreciate it. Matt, we're going to throw the same question to you. Tell us a little bit about the 3-year program for you. What was it ultimately that made you select to go into that particular program?
Yeah, going off of what Cody said about the setup of the program, being able to have a smaller workload made it much easier to transition. I know for me personally, I was working full-time. I was out of school for about 2 years. And so jumping right back into school, the Summer Start program allowed me an opportunity to sort of ease my way back into things in terms of like formulating study habits and sort of figuring out what worked best for me as a student going into law school.
Got it. So you would say it was more about needing that extra bit of time to maybe stretch out that first semester into 2 semesters.
Right, exactly.
Got it. That's great. Thank you. I'm going to stay with you, Matt. Let's talk a little bit about the 3-year program and its impact on the rest of your experience at the law school. So starting off in the summer, does that change anything with regard to, we talked a little bit about the curriculum and how that changes. Does it change anything with student groups? Does it change anything with experiential learning opportunities? What changes outside of just stretching out that first semester into 2 semesters do you notice as a student, or did you notice as a student?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, being a part of that summer group, it feels as though you become very close and tight-knit with your summer cohort. We sort of somewhat have our very own family, and we very much look out for each other throughout our law school experience, even now in our 2nd year. that we're 1 year removed. So there's something sort of special about being a part of that group and figuring out law school together as one cohesive group, especially when it's such a small class group. I think our class was about 30-ish people between the summer starters and the HADs. So that was pretty special. In terms of navigating other things, I feel as though being able to be a part of that Summer Start program kind of got you a head start in terms of exam preparation and understanding how to go about studying the material and better preparing you to tackle on your fall and spring semesters. In terms of internship opportunities and other opportunities, I also think it gives you a better idea because you'll have summer grades at least to reflect on as you approach the fall semester and being able to apply to internships and programs. And it kind of gives you a head start in working with CSO to target specific internships and programs that are available for you.
And what is CSO? Tell us.
Oh, I apologize. I'm just throwing out acronyms.
That's okay.
But our very own CSO is our Career Strategies Office, which helps students navigate internship and post-grad opportunities. So we have a group of advisors in the CSO office who are tailored to helping students work on their resume, work on mock interviews, and prepare themselves for the application process in terms of seeking out internships and job opportunities.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Cody, I want to hear from you about the cohort experience. So what was it like for you coming into a relatively small, you were also in summer 22, is that correct? And that was roughly, we said around 30 students, we think, between the two programs?
Like 30 to 40, somewhere in that range. I think that, like Matt said, we have like a really tight-knit group of the summer starters, because law school can be a pretty competitive environment, but I feel like coming in with an even smaller group, it made us kind of let our guards down and just really become friends with one another, which was a really nice experience to have, especially going into the fall semester when we then met the rest of our cohort. But we already had formed friendships and it was really nice. And it also helped with making friends that started in the fall because we had a little bit of experience under our belt. So it was easier to help the other folks navigate the process. And we actually had the opportunity to kind of lend a helping hand, even in the first semester of law school.
That's exactly right. Thank you. I really appreciate that feedback. And that is what I hear from students that have started in each of the summers over the last several years. So with your summer, it was right around 30 students, whereas this past summer was upwards of about 40. That number can fluctuate anywhere from maybe 20 on the lower end to maybe 40-ish on the higher end. And I think that that's something that a lot of students aren't necessarily considering when they're looking at the different programs, is the actual size of the cohort they're coming into. Fall students, just for those of you out there that are listening to tonight's discussion, usually if you're coming in to the fall, you're coming in with about 110 or so other students, right? So it's still a very small cohort. We're typically only bringing in about 150 total students between the summer and the fall, and that might go up to about 160 depending on the year, but no bigger than that. Right. So in the summer, you might come into a group of as few as 20 or 30 or 40 students, and then your peers join in the next semester starting in the fall, and that's about 100 or so students. Rita, let's talk to you about your experience. So what has it been like joining the accelerated program, right? So how many did you start with roughly, and what has that cohort experience been like?
So I started this past summer and our cohort was about 20 students in the AJD program. And then if you included the summer starts, it was about 40 in total. It's been a very good experience because with the starting in the summer, it's a shorter semester, but you still have the full course load. And then of course you're starting law school. So it's just a whole new experience. So the fact that you have like a small group of friends most to like go through that whole experience with is great. It's like a support system, you know, you're not struggling alone. So it definitely made a hard transition a lot easier.
That's great. Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that with us. I want to make sure that I throw it out to the audience. If at any time you have questions, please put them in the chat. You can send them individually to Jacqueline or to myself if you don't want to ask them in front of the group. You can ask them anonymously, whatever is your preference, but get those questions in there and I'll continue on with my questions and we'll continue to check and see if I see any in the chat. So I want to talk about experiential learning. That's something that we just talk about here at Drexel constantly. I want to throw it to each of you to just talk about experiential learning opportunities that you're considering becoming a part of in your time at the law school, and whether or not that was at all impacted by coming in through the program that you came in through. And we'll start with you, Rita. Where does experiential learning opportunities fit into an accelerated program that is essentially chopping a whole year off of law school, right?
So normally AJDs, they do the experiential learning in their second summer. So the summer that's coming up for me. Yeah, I'm sure the people know what a co-op is. It's, you know, a semester-long internship, but we also have clinics available, and takes a little bit more planning, but I've been told that you can also do a clinic, which is a year-long opportunity if you plan well and talk to the people at the experiential learning office.
That's exactly right. That's right. The co-op, so for those of you that might not be familiar, co-op can be done either in one, let's say 12 to 13 week chunk where you're doing it in about 30 hours per week and doing it full time, or it could be stretched out. It could be stretched across several semesters. And the co-op is required for all students, right? And so you'll get to do that through any of these programs, whether it's the accelerated or the summer program. Matt, do you want to talk a little bit about experiential learning? Have you done anything yet? If not, what are your thoughts or plans? How do you want to fit that into your law school experience?
Yeah, so I haven't done any planning as of yet in terms of determining whether or not I want to do co-op or clinic. However, I will say that the Office of Experiential Learning is pretty much an open door policy. So I do plan on making an appointment to speak to the advisors there to figure out what lane is best for me. I'm not necessarily sure what concentration of law I want to pursue as of yet, which has kind of been why I've been slow to seek out those opportunities. But in taking more classes and speaking to more professors, as I find areas of interest, I'm leaning towards some co-ops more than others. So still figuring that out.
That's great. Thank you. And Cody, you gave us a huge list of all the different things you're doing outside of just the classroom, right? Do you feel like you were able to fit those in better because of your program that you chose?
Yeah, definitely. Like I can't emphasize how nice it was to have one less class than the fall starts. You just have more time because you're spending less time in class. But most of the things I've gotten involved with, I got involved with in my 2L year, but I do think that having more time in 1L to just like develop study habits and adjust to law school allowed me to feel more confident in taking more onto my plate, because I had already gotten through 3 semesters and it feels like it's more doable now. So I definitely think that was helpful in transitioning and feeling confident in this environment.
That's wonderful. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. I hear that from a lot of summer start students in particular. I'm going to go immediately back to you, Cody. Since so many of our folks that are with us this evening have not yet applied or only just recently started looking at law school, or maybe are on the verge of submitting their application in a couple of days, can you give us any advice to prospective students that are considering these programs? What kind of things should they be asking themselves, or what should they be thinking through when they're trying to decide if a program like this might be a good fit versus the traditional 3-year?
Yeah, I think like Matt said, it's nice to have a transitional period. So if that's a little bit less pressure. Law school moves really, really quickly, and your 1L year is really important. So having extra time to trial and error and see what works was really helpful. And So I would say if you're someone who is making a career change, or if you're someone who's was out of law school or out of school for a little while, I think it's nice to have that introductory phase where you can, like Matt was saying, test out routines and see what works for you with just a couple of classes instead of a full course load. And I would say, like, at first I was a little bit discouraged about the idea of giving away my last free summer, but I definitely still had a lot of fun. And I think that you're going to make a lot of friends, and it makes the experience worth losing your summer because you have so much extra time in the fall to study and also just continue to be a person, which is like really important. So I would say consider for yourself if you think that putting in a little bit of extra time on the calendar is worth it for you based on your situation.
Great, thank you. Very, very comprehensive and thoughtful answer. Matt, I'll throw it to you also. What about you? What was going through your mind when you were thinking about applying to law school that ultimately led you to say, yes, I'm going to apply for this particular program?
Yeah, so what led me to apply for this particular program is I was very much in Cody's shoes when I thought about the loss of my summer. But the thought of being able to have a way shorter workload just sounded too appealing to me to give up. And despite having to give up the majority of your summer, you still have, I think, like about 2 or 3 weeks towards the end of the semester to still enjoy summer. And being able to meet as many new people as I did, and also still be able to figure out, like, for me personally, work-life balance is a priority. So for me to still be able to still manage and have that going into my fall and spring semesters was truly a priority for me. And the Summer Start program granted me that. And so I feel like I was able to fulfill a truly meaningful 1L experience, being able to network, actually enjoy being in the classroom with my peers, because the reality is this experience goes by fast. So being a part of this 1L Summer Start program has really allowed me to really enjoy the environment I'm in and really take it all in. And so I'm extremely thankful for that.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you. Thank you. Rita, so the 2-year program is almost the exact opposite, right? Like, we're hearing from Cody and from Matt how nice it is to kind of ease into law school, where with the advanced or the accelerated program, rather, you are doing like it's like you're on a roller coaster, right? And you're just going straight on through. What was that first summer like for you?
We definitely hit the ground running. As you correctly said, it's a different experience from the Summer Start, but still very fulfilling, very challenging. I think you quickly learn, like, oh, is law school for you by doing it on a quicker timeline? And then, yeah, I guess that's the best way to say it. You're hitting the ground running for sure and finding out if it is a good fit for you, but not like to discourage anyone who's interested in it. If you can survive your first summer, is what I was told, is that law school will be a breeze. I'm not sure if it's a breeze yet, but definitely like more manageable. But it's a great way to just get in there, see if it's for you.
That's great. I'm going to stick with you, Rita. I got a couple great questions that came through directly to me that I want to just make sure I get to address. Can you talk about your accessibility to faculty members, working with professors? How has that been for you as a student?
Accessibility to staff and faculty, I don't think it changes. As an AJD in the summer, we had even the dean of students was teaching our contracts class. He teaches a couple classes, so you're able to interact with faculty they're very accessible. They have an open door policy. I'm trying to think. Yeah, no, the accessibility wasn't a problem at all.
That's great. That's great. And also in the fall, working with faculty in general, have you been able to attend office hours or get to meet with faculty anytime that you had questions?
Yes. Faculty are available. Sorry. Yeah, the faculty are available.
Okay.
Nothing really changes. Yeah. The schedule is accelerated, but it's a typical law student schedule. So you have the time to talk to your professors after class. you can schedule with them if you can't come to the office hours.
Nice. Thank you. Matt, Cody, anything to add at all about working with faculty?
Yeah, I think I haven't met like many professors that don't just feel like they want to help. So I think that is nice. Even though a lot of people they're very, very, very smart and have a lot of credentials, they're still down to earth and want to help us succeed. So that's been really pleasant. I don't really think that being a summer start does anything but give you a little bit of an advantage because you already know a couple of professors. But I don't really think it otherwise changes your experience that way.
Thank you.
I echo what Cody said, and I want to emphasize the community here at Drexel. Like, everyone very much wants everyone to be successful, and the faculty will emphasize that. And even if you can't make their office hours, they're pretty open and flexible and meeting you wherever you may be in terms of your availability.
Nice. That's great to hear. And I want to stick with you both on the 3-year summer with one of these questions that I received. Are there academic support set up for students who begin in the summertime?
Yeah, all of the academic skills programming, which is like kind of study skills, and Dean Scholars, which is like peer-led like review sessions, they all continue through the summer. So you'll be getting the same experience as your fall start students with that. And office hours is the same. All of those resources are still made available to you.
Nice. And Rita, this is specific to the accelerated JD program. Do you get any breaks in the summertime?
Yes, it's a shorter break, but we get a break. There's a 2-week break between the summer semester and the fall semester.
Nice. And for those of the attendees out there that just aren't sure about the actual schedule, do you recall roughly when you started classes and when they were finished in the summertime?
I believe classes started May 8th, and we were done by the end of July, and then the first 2 weeks of August were final.
Perfect. Thank you very much. For our 3-year summer starters, do you have any thoughts at all about, I'm looking at these questions that we've got here. Oh, this is specific to application deadlines. So I'm going to skip that for the moment because we're going to jump into that in just a second. 3-year summer starters, can you talk to us about then meeting your students who started off in the fall and what that was like? Do you feel like you felt some sort of a distance between you and that class, or did you feel closer because you had already been here? What was that like?
There definitely was a bit of a divide initially, but I think that's just natural because we already had formed friendships and bonds. So it was awkward for the new students to try to break into our friend groups, and also awkward for us to meet new people when we already had people that we felt so close with. But just in a few weeks, I would say everything just became more integrated and everyone started being more relaxed. But I don't think that it was a negative experience at all. And I think that the awkwardness was short-lived.
Nice. That's good to hear. Matt, for you as well? Similar experience?
Agreed. It was very short-lived. It wasn't like us versus them or anything like that. It was just a matter of like, yeah, the summer cohort knows each other and we're like all friends already. So it was probably like a little awkward at first, but of course, over the next couple of weeks, once you get to know everyone, it's fine.
That's great. Thank you. This is a great question that I want to throw to each of you, and we'll go in the reverse order. So we'll start with Rita on this one. Any disadvantages that you can think of from having chosen the program that you picked?
I guess a disadvantage would be I didn't realize how quickly I was starting the program. I got my acceptance. I applied a little later. Don't be like me, apply November 15th. I applied in December and I got my acceptance in February, and the program started in May. So I had to make a quick decision. I was like, okay, do I want to do this? Am I ready to quit my job and move? So I guess that's a little disadvantage. Just be aware of the timeline. And then I'm sure a disadvantage some people might think is that you have one less summer, so you don't have as many opportunities with like internships and working in law firms. But that's a decision you have to make before you start the program. And the way that I see it is that I'm just exchanging that one summer to start working a year early, so it's fine.
That's great. And I'll stick with you for this one since it is specific to the AJD before going back to Cody and Matt. But can you decelerate? Can you, if you start a 2-year program and say, whoa, this is way too quick, can you slow down and opt to do 3-year instead?
Yes, D is definitely an option. If you get a summer opportunity that you really want and it just fit with the 2-year program, you're welcome to decelerate. There's no judgment. Everyone understands and you decide how you want it to be.
That's right. That's right. Thank you. Cody and Matt, we'll start with you. Cody, I wanted to ask you if you felt like there was any disadvantages that you would want prospective students to be aware of if they were considering 3-year summer.
I honestly can't think of any disadvantages. I had a few friends who were considering applying to Drexel, and I really recommended starting in the summer. Like, I can't emphasize enough how nice it is to have one less class. It's just law school is a lot, and it all moves so quickly that having a little bit more space to just focus on 3 classes instead of 4, it makes things feel a lot more manageable. And otherwise you're living the same experience. So besides losing your summer, I guess that's the only disadvantage I can think of, because after that initial summer, everything else is the same. So it's pretty good.
Thank you. Matt, same for you, or did you have any disadvantages that you could think of?
Yeah, I mean, I echo everything that Cody said. Like, there's not many disadvantages that I could think of. The only thing that may come to mind, and I think Rita might have touched on it a little bit, is that understanding that the Summer Start program would start in May. So I know for me, coming from out of town, in terms of thinking about me moving into the city and finding an apartment and getting all of those outside school things situated is something to consider first. That, you know, may be more of an expedited process rather than coming into the fall, but really the negatives are little to none, I would say, for starting in the summer.
That's great. That's great. I'll stick with you on this one, Matt. Now, all 3 of you came here from, at some point or another, right, out from living outside of the Philadelphia area, moved to Philadelphia. And I got more than one question from folks that are in attendance tonight asking what that process was like for you. And you had just mentioned it, Matt, where you were coming from, where when you moved here?
So I'm from Brooklyn, New York, but at the time I was working in Charlotte, North Carolina. So I came from Charlotte over to Philly.
And was it, you already had some sort of housing situation set up, or you had to find housing quickly?
So I found housing for myself. So I didn't find housing through the school. I actually found like private housing, like an apartment outside the school. So about like 15 to 20-ish minutes outside the school. So during my time in Charlotte, I was actually researching apartments and thinking about where I could see myself living in terms of accessibility, taking the train or the bus, or what that would look like for me.
Got it. Thank you. Cody, what was your housing situation? Did you have to scramble to find something, or you had something lined up already?
I'm luckily from Philadelphia, so, and my family, yeah, I'm a bad example. I live at home with my parents.
Not at all a bad example. Not at all. Rita, you were at Temple, is that right?
Yes, I went to school at Temple, but I moved back home to Baltimore, Maryland, and then moved back here. With the housing situation, I don't think my experience is a good one either, because I just reached out to friends who still lived in the area. I was like, hey, you want a roommate? So
Yeah. That's, you know, it's very common. And that's why I like for prospective students to get to hear from you what your situation was like. A lot of students, it's a big concern. It's a big fear coming in, but they end up getting onto the social media channels that we set up for admitted students. And then oftentimes we'll connect with students like the 3 of you through those social media channels. where prospective students are being invited to take a room in somebody's apartment or things like that. So there are a lot of resources for any of you out there that are concerned about moving and what that might look like. I want to touch on, we got at least a question in here about community, and I know several of you mentioned it in your introductions of why you chose the school. Can you just talk about when you were looking at law schools, right, across the board, what was it about Drexel that stood out? Why did you ultimately choose Drexel, and did it have anything to do with the community, or was it specifically the programs that you enrolled in? And we can start with anybody on this one. Cody?
Yeah, so for me, I applied to mostly schools in the Philadelphia area, and I took one day where I called every single school and asked the same question, and just kind of tried to suss out like the vibe based off of the responses that I was getting. And I felt like Drexel was the most friendly. People wanted to answer questions, people answered the phone, and you could feel like a warmth through the phone, which I know sounds kind of corny, but some of the other schools, the responses I was getting did not feel that way. And so then I came and I took a tour here, and I felt like that same feeling I had over the phone really did translate into my experience, like meeting people. And I got connected with our DE&I dean, who is amazing. And when I spoke with her, she just made me feel really comfortable about the idea of coming here. So that was what kind of solidified my decision.
That's great to hear that. Rita, do you want to go next?
Sure. So I didn't get the opportunity to visit the campus before applying and getting accepted. But now that I am here, I'm very thankful that I picked Drexel just because it's very community-based, very close in. It's a smaller school, it's a newer school, but I think that's to its advantage because you just feel so much closer. I compare it to my undergrad. I went to Temple. Temple's a very large school, like over 30,000 students. And sometimes you do feel a little lost in such a big crowd, but I never feel like that here at Drexel.
That's great. Thanks, Rita. Matt, how about you?
Yeah, so the community was definitely something that I sought after. I came from a smaller undergrad at Franklin and Marshall where it was small class sizes. And so in going into grad school, that's also something that I wanted to replicate because I really enjoyed having that personal relationship with them, with not only my classmates, but my professors and them knowing me from also outside the classroom and actually having a personal relationship with them. And then so in transitioning, community was definitely something I prioritized and something that really drew out to me that Drexel offered. So, yeah.
That's great. That's great to hear. Thank you. I appreciate all of you for sharing those, your reasons for wanting to pick Drexel. So I'm looking through the chat. It looks like we've answered everything that has come through. So I'm giving one final shout before I ask one last question to each panelist. If there's any other questions out there, please send them to me, send them to Jacqueline, send them to the whole group. Let us know so we can answer them before we end tonight's call. But the question that I wanted to just throw at each of you to ask, what is one piece of advice that you wish that you knew before you applied to law school? Now that you've been here, now that you've got some time under your belts, in reflection, thinking about the folks that are on the call tonight, they're all prospective students, they're not in law school yet. What is one piece of advice that you wish that you knew before you applied to law school?
I could take it first. My advice is that try to enjoy the process. Applying to law school is very stressful. You're making a big change. You know, it's probably something that you've been pursuing for a while or something that you really want. But I think in that process of applying, you kind of forget that your life is changing. And once you're in law school, you're there, you hit the ground running regardless of what program you're in. So try to make time to enjoy it before you get there because your life will change and it's just go, go, go once you get there.
I think that's beautiful advice. Who wants to go next? Cody?
Yeah, I think that kind of similar. I think what I wish I knew was how fast law school was going to go by. I was not someone who wanted to be a lawyer my whole life. I was not somebody who really knew that much about anything. So coming to law school and seeing how quickly you have to get up to speed with everything. So I think my advice would be, once you've made the commitment to go to law school, start thinking about what you want to get out of the experience, because once you're here, everything starts happening and it's it's fast and it's a lot and it's kind of a whirlwind. So I think being grounded in like the why you want to be here and the what you want to get out of it is really, really helpful.
Super advice. Thank you. Matt, how about you?
Yeah, I feel like I hold similar advice. And I echoed it a little before earlier, is that it goes by very quickly. And sometimes it's kind of easy to get lost in terms of thinking about, like, once you're in law school, that you were at some point in a position where you really wanted to be in law school. And sometimes that kind of gets lost when you're in the whirlwind of just being in school and thinking about everything else that comes with it. And so if there's any piece of advice I would give, is to definitely be grounded and to take it all in one day at a time. And as stressful as it can be, to just take it one day at a time.
Thank you. And I got one question from folks, and if any of you have an answer to this that you'd like to share, please do. Is there anything specific that I should prepare before starting law school? So thinking about, I guess let's go through the exercise that you're like within a few weeks of starting school. Is there any advice you would give in that circumstance?
I think I give unpopular advice, but I still think it might be good advice. I think that it's useful. Like, there's a lot of programs. One's called PDLG that does like before you start law school boot camp kind of thing. But also you can kind of simulate that yourself just using YouTube and like Googling things. But I do think it's helpful to get acquainted with the types of things you're going to need to do in law school before you get here. I'm a first generation law student, and I know a lot of my peers aren't. And so they had a little bit of an upper hand coming in because their parents or their family members gave them the heads up about some of the things that they needed to know. So I highly suggest just doing a little bit of research, passive research. You don't have to understand what you're reading, but just reading it one time sometimes is helpful, because when you hear the words for the first time, when you're sitting in class, they're not as scary because they jog your memory a little bit. So feel no pressure. You don't need to go like ordering textbooks and trying to memorize the law. That's probably not helpful, but just doing some research about what the experience is going to be like, talking to people that have done it before, I think is really, really helpful.
Thank you. And what does PDLG stand for? I just put it in the chat. So
that's
that
the Philadelphia Diversity Law Group, and their mission is to help first-gen students, people who come from traditionally underrepresented backgrounds, to excel in law school and also to get good placement in jobs. I did the program. I really enjoyed it. I was able to work at a big law firm in my first summer, which is kind of unheard of. So I highly suggest getting involved with them if you're eligible as early as possible, even before school starts.
Thank you. That's great advice. I threw it in the chat for anybody that wants to learn more about it. Any other thoughts, Matt or Rita, about advice that you want to give? And if not, that's okay. I do want to talk quickly about admissions deadline. So we talked a little bit about November 15th being the first, upcoming deadline, the one that's coming up the closest to now. After November 15th, we ask that you try to apply by January 15th if you're considering the summer program. So that would be either of the two programs we've been discussing this evening, either the 2-year accelerated or the 3-year summer start. January 15, I would say, would at least get you a decision by around early March-ish. That's usually our goal, at least, so that you're not then stuck in a situation where you're trying to find housing or figure out how to start law school in a very short amount of time. Any other questions that came through, Jacqueline?
So the other one is how we assess eligibility for each of the 3 programs, for the summer start, for the 3-year for the AJD, for the 3-year summer, and for the 3-year fall, and how we look at different criteria for each of the programs?
Got it. That's a great question. I would say, to be honest, it's really dependent on a couple of factors, but specifically, we look at everybody that's in the pool for those programs, right? Because we are piecing together a cohort, and because the cohorts are very small, we're trying to see, is everybody at roughly the same levels in terms of being ready to jump into a program like the accelerated program, for example. So with the accelerated, it's not always going to be the case, but we're looking for a slightly higher LSAT score. We're looking for just evidence that you can jump into a program like this one where you're going to be taking classes straight through for 2 full years without taking a break. So we're thinking about grit. We're thinking about resilience. We want to see evidence that you've been in tough situations, whether it was inside the classroom or outside of the classroom, that you've overcome and that you're able to show that through your application. And we're asking that very specific question in your personal statement. So you have ample opportunity to make that argument to the admissions committee. And what I would recommend is, if you have questions about yourself and your own eligibility, reach out to the admissions office. We're happy to do one-on-one calls with you. We can do Zoom calls. We can talk through your very specific academic background and what might be the best fit for you in terms of the 2 programs, and whether or not, at least preliminarily, we think that you would have admissibility to the program. It's something that it's never going to be a perfect science. We're always going to send everything out to the admissions committee and get their feedback before you get a decision. But myself, Jacqueline, our colleague Ina, we're always happy to talk with you about your specific academic and professional background to see where you fall. Anything I missed there, Jacqueline? Great. So the last thing I wanted to do, if we have no more questions, is just put the Visit Us link into the chat. So we're coming up toward the very end of the fall semester. We're going to be jumping into finals in just a couple of weeks, I guess, right after Thanksgiving, right? And so we're going to be having our class visits and our virtual visits and all of those ways that you can engage with us are going to be ending very soon, toward the end of November, rather. And then they restart at the beginning of February and run all the way through April. So if you're not able to come and meet with us, it's okay. We'll be redoing visits and things like that beginning in February. But you can always sign up for a virtual visit where you can connect with and meet with one of our students, speak with them one-on-one through Zoom. And like I said, reaching out to us in admissions, we're always happy to help you. I want to thank our panelists. Thank you so much for being here this evening. And thank you, those of us who attended tonight. Let us know how we did. If there's anything that we can do to help you, reach out to us in the admissions office so that we can answer your questions. And we really look forward to receiving your applications and working with you through the admissions process. Thanks, everybody.
Everyone. Have a great evening.